Hey guys, my name is Graham Johnson. Welcome back to Tabletop Glory, and in today's video we're going to be doing the Millennium Falcon. Now specifically we're going to be working on the cockpit, so if you've missed everything up to this point, it's all in one video. It's last week's video. Go check it out. I'll put a link right here, right now, so you guys can go see that. Enough of my babbling, let's get on with the video. Now we're going to start off by painting all of our panels black. Now in the original Millennium Falcon, when you look at a lot of the scenes, it looks as though they're actually a super dark blue. My theory is that they were using a blue screen when filming, similar to a green screen, and because of all the studio lights, the shiny reflective black plastic that they were probably using to make the interior of the Millennium Falcon was reflecting a lot of that blue back into the cockpit. As well as, my theory is this because when you look at the Solo movie, a lot of the same panels that are blue in the original trilogy are now black. So I'm going ahead and I'm painting all of my panels black, and we're going to give that a dry brush of gray at the end just to kind of make everything pop. But we're doing this as a quick base layer, and then we're going to start adding some colors. Now if you're following along at home, don't forget there are some panels on the roof of the cockpit as well. Now I'm not going to stay true to the original colors in mine. I'm kind of doing a mix of colors from the Solo movie, the original trilogy, and the sequels, and that's just because I wanted this to feel my own, and I don't really like any one particular way that the inside of this cockpit is represented in any of the movies. I kind of like a combination of all of them. Now I'm using some XV88 that is a nice leather brown color. Any leather brown color will do, and then I end up kind of mixing a little bit of tan into that to kind of brighten the color up. But we're just using straight XV88 as our base tone, and I'm just going to put that in on all of the seats. And I end up using this same method to paint Chewbacca as well, and then I just put a dark brown wash on it, but we'll cover that when we paint him. Now I do start using Mornfang Brown on Chewbacca just to get a nice deep tone, and I use that XV88 to kind of bring out some of the highlights on him. Now in addition, I forgot to record it, but you can see on the back of the cockpit door that I actually hit that with a little bit of Screaming Skull, as that seems to be kind of this desert tan color in the original series, so I went ahead and painted it that way. Now I end up using that same desert tan color, that Screaming Skull, as a way to kind of base Han Solo's shirt as well as all of the skin tones to brighten them up and get them ready for Kislev Flesh later down the road. Now with the case of Luke Skywalker, it appears that the sculpt they decided to go with was kind of a Return of the Jedi look. This allowed me to use the same Abaddon black I was using before, however I ended up adding a bit of matte medium so that it gave a real matte finish. I ended up using this exact same one for Han Solo's vest. I could have gone with more of a Cantor blue color for Han Solo, however at this small scale and especially through the cockpit windows, I don't think anybody will really be able to tell. Now I noticed in the original trilogy that continues all the way forward into the sequels that there are some panels on the back walls of the Millennium Falcon that are gray, so I went ahead and knocked those out for continuity's sake. Now since I was already using Screaming Skull as my skin tones, I went ahead and painted Luke Skywalker's hair that way, and that allowed me to use Lamentor's yellow as a very light glaze to go ahead and get that blonde hair look. Now here you can see me cleaning up Han Solo's vest, and I'm actually going to be adding a little bit more of white into my Screaming Skull to kind of give it that white t-shirt look, because it wasn't a super clean shirt that he wears in the original series, but it wasn't quite khaki like I ended up painting it here. Now because I am a dingus, I didn't really stop to think about the angle the camera was sitting at. I was just painting for the sake of painting here, so I apologize. Things are going to be on camera, then they're going to be off camera, then they're going to be on camera. Basically what I'm doing here is anywhere where I want color in the cockpit, whether it's some kind of light switch, whatever the case may be, I'm starting out with a dark version of that color, and then I'm either mixing a brighter version into it or I'm adding white to make a brighter version of it, and then I'm going on top of that again. So an example of this would be if I were to want something to be red, I would start with a corn red, I would add a tiny bit of pink to make it brighter or a tiny bit of orange to make it brighter, and then once it had dried I would paint on top with that brighter color. And that is what's allowing me to kind of paint on top of black like this and to still get these vibrant colors in the cockpit. Ultramarine blue contrast paint. I wanted to go ahead and add a little pop of color. Now this ended up being a bit too much even after it dried. Now in the Solo movie, these panels on the roof are a much noticeable blue. However, in the original prequels, they're just black, and in the sequels, they appear to almost have a brown tinge to them. No idea what these panels are. I imagine that there's some kind of padding or something. They don't appear to be any kind of an access panel, so I wasn't really concerned about the colors I was using on them. I just wanted to add some color to make things look interesting. Now, if you watched the previous video, you're going to be very familiar with the little palette that you see on screen here. Now, basically what this palette is it is a Tamiya weathering palette, and these are these really awesome acrylic, almost paste-like weathering pigments. They do a really good job at sticking to things, and so I like using them for dry brushing and things on small surfaces. Things where if I were to use normal paint and I went a little heavy-handed, it could completely ruin the effect and make it so that I have to paint the entire thing over again. This allows me to just put these tiny little micro scratches all over the dashboard without having to really worry about where I'm placing them. I can just take a dry brush, dab it on the little palette, dab it on the model, and it's done. And here we go, test fitting the two pieces together for the first time after they've been painted, checking out a few things, and I realized that the crack in the door where light is supposed to come through if you have the lighting kit is just this big bright white spot, so I pulled it apart and fixed that. But other than that, I was very happy with how everything looked. Now, when it came to the upper and lower turrets, the big guns on the Millennium Falcon, I wanted to go ahead and put a little pop of color inside these so that if anybody ever took a look up close at them, you'd be able to see something more than just the shapes. Turns out this might have been a waste of my effort. Without the lighting kit, this area of the model ends up being pretty dark. And in my personal opinion, if you do get the lighting kit, you may want to drill some holes in from different panels on the back wall just so that it adds a little pop of color through that section of the model. Now I'm using Cantor Blue here to kind of glaze up all these little pads on the walls to just add a little bit of color, and I end up painting the seat up in that same leather brown scheme that we saw for the cockpit. But this, honestly, it all ends up being for naught because you really can't see anything in there. Leaving it this super dark black grayish wash probably would have been more than enough because you can't really see anything past the seat. Now, I didn't do anything crazy for the landing gear. I mostly stuck to using Tamiya panel liner black and brown to kind of add some color. If I wanted to add a little bit of rust in there, I probably could have done the same thing we did with the body, using that dark Mournfang brown and just kind of picking out a few edges to make it look worn out. But honestly, these are such a small detail on such a large model, and when it's sitting in your display case, unless this thing is at eye level, doing this little wash all over everything is more than enough because it's just going to get lost in the massive detail that is the rest of the model. Now, this is arguably one of my favorite parts about finishing off a model, especially if it comes with a base already. For as much as I like to design bases, having one that's already kind of laid out for you and then kind of figuring out what you can do with it is one of my favorite parts. So we're going to kind of base this on Hoth for two reasons. Number one, I already have a snow speeder and I love the way the base turned out, and I would love to have these two models side by side, so I'm going to do them up in similar themes. But number two, snow bases are a lot of fun for me. I really enjoy doing them. So as you can see, we start out with a big old splodge of glue. We use some large aggregate and then we fill in with sand. We hit that with a little bit of isopropanol through a mister, and then we're going to go ahead and use watered down PVA. What this is going to do is it's going to mix with that rubbing alcohol. It's going to spread out evenly throughout all of that rock, and then as it dries quicker than normal because of the rubbing alcohol, we'll be able to get back to this a lot faster rather than having to leave it all day. So then we're going to go ahead and we're going to take some ice blue from Reaper Miniatures. I really love this color for doing this kind of an effect, and we're going to just really messily stick it all over the base. We're not really worried about the way that we're putting it on. We just kind of want to get it good enough to eliminate brush strokes, but not enough to eliminate the original gray color of the base. What this is going to do is it's going to help to break up shapes in places where our snow effect is extra thin. And then also, as that snow effect breaks down over time, because snow flock tends to do that, it tends to rub away and break down over time, this is going to help to hide the base underneath and make it so that we don't have to repair and upkeep this model anywhere near as often if we had just left it gray. So once we're ready to add our snow flock, we're going to go ahead and put on our glue a little bit thick. Now the reason I do this is because as we tap the excess snow flock back off into the container, the glue will run and ripple a little bit and give us a more realistic texture on the base. That rippling effect that you get from the glue moving around is going to make it look like it's wind swept. Similar to how you would see in a desert, you're going to get that similar effect on Hoth. If you look at some of the still shots and the concept art, you kind of get that windswept look. So this kind of helps to do that for us by putting on a nice thick layer of this PVA glue. And then we're just going to use a plastic spoon or whatever you happen to have to kind of sprinkle it on. You could do this by hand, but snow flock does tend to stick to pretty much everything. So I try to not use my hands because I'm constantly finding it all over my workspace afterwards. So you gotta be kind of careful with this stuff. So here's a great example of what I mean by it gives you that natural windswept appearance here. You can see when I dumped it, some of the glue kind of shifted in places. Anywhere where it gives you much too high of a peak, you can kind of stamp it back down with the spoon like I did there, which is another great reason why you shouldn't be doing this by hand. Now with me working on a glass top desktop, I'm able to kind of clean things up a bit better. I cannot stress enough how much this stuff literally sticks to everything, so if you're not working on top of glass, I recommend putting down some newspaper. Now, as we enjoy the fruits of our labor and we check out some of these nice slow-mo shots of the Millennium Falcon spinning around here, I really want to stress the fact that you'll notice if you've watched me do bases before, one of the things that I like to do, similar to what we did with the rocks, is I soak everything through with rubbing alcohol and then I add glue on top of everything to lock it down. We did not do that with the snow flock. That is how you keep it looking fluffy. But by doing that and not locking it all down with more glue, you end up creating what I call a show piece. This is a piece that is for show. This is not a gaming piece. The more it is handled, the more that foam flock is going to come off. So if you want to use this for gaming and you want to use that way of doing your snow bases for your wargaming, you are going to have to lock it down with more glue, and unfortunately by doing so you get rid of that fluffy look. So you've either got to decide that I'm going to constantly upkeep my bases and re-add snow flock, or I'm going to lock it down with glue and it's going to look a little weird. In any case, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for all the love and support, and thank you for almost 1,000 followers. This is ecstatic. I am blown away. So thank you guys so much for all that love and support. And as always, may your display case always be overfilled and your pile of shame never run empty. Until next time, guys.